Live. Welcome to Talking Crit. Mike, what did you just pound open?
Beer.
Beer.
Yeah. New Glarus beer.
Oh, yeah. From your Wisconsin trip. I don't want to hear about it.
I'm pouring it on ice right now. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm Eric Tenkar. You probably know me. I'm assuming you know my once-a-week work spouse. That would be Bad Mike, stayed right. But below us, our special guest today is Don Semora, Wizard Tower Games. Don designs games. Don produces games. Don publishes games physically. I mean, he actually makes what he makes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Makes what I design.
There you go. Yeah. Listen, I guess I was talking in a lower dialect of the English language. You'll have to forgive me for that one. I am going to briefly catch up on the comments that have been filling up the room. Listen, no millions are going over to Mike's to fix his headset.
Oh, come on.
We gotta fix Mike. Paul, thank your son for subscribing. We're very happy for that. And thank you, Paul, for being a member of the tavern here on the YouTubes. Scott, I tried logging in as group member, didn't work. Oh, there's that group member thing on Facebook is a weird and quasi anonymous way to post things, but if you make the same spelling and grammar mistakes, everybody knows who you are anyway. So just throwing it out. Yes, we finally got Bad Mike to work. Paul, thank you. Mike, check out the Moondrop CPU IEMs with the mic cable. $20 well spent.
So, what language is he speaking? That seems like a
different
language.
Listen, I stopped building computers 15 years ago, at least, so I don't know.
Here's how simple they have to be. I have to plug it in, and it has to work. That the ones that Eric got me, usually that's what happens. I usually plug them in, and they work. Every once in a while, they do something because it's my fault. I've changed this setting, so.
Well, you always can hear, but you can't be heard. So that's part of the problem.
Hear. That's true. Yeah, it's the mic's problem. And this mic is weird. So this mic has an issue. It doesn't really work. So I'm using the mic that's actually in the laptop because this mic has never worked. It's never worked properly. So
really,
yeah. So I think that's part of the issue. I'm not using the mic I should be using. But go ahead. Oh, that's it. I'll make do. Remember what my old headphones look like? Does everybody remember that? Does everybody remember these?
Oh man, yeah.
Golly,
I had a set like that. My cat chewed the wire. I didn't even know until I was playing a game of EverQuest with my friends, and it's like, why can't they hear me? And it's like, oh, there's a dangling wire coming off. The cat chewed her way through it. So, folks, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff today, but one of the main focuses is Don has a Kickstarter going for D20 Delving. I'm going to bring that up on the screen real quick. It is a board game, but it's got a unique feature, and also, I guess you could say, a unique personality attached to this. Because if you look at the screen, you look at the graphic, that's none other than Tim Kask. And if you've ever met Tim Kask, he's pretty much unfiltered. I don't know if
a crotchety old fart. Yep.
That's a nice way to put it. I wouldn't have used fart. I would have used crotchety old fart.
I thought we might have been. Are we PG rated or we are? I can't remember.
Oh, we're at the very least PG-13, if not
hard R. Maybe hard R. I don't know.
I don't know about hard.
If I pull up my shirt, are we hard R?
But Don got Tim Kask involved in this in a way that I have not seen in a game, especially in our community. But I mean, basically doing a voiceover of a board game. You know, he's reading the cards, he's reading descriptions, and I find that very interesting. So, Don, before we get into the mechanics of this game,
Sure.
How did you get Tim involved?
What I basically did was I just simply reached out to him on Facebook. I had talked to Tim a few times prior to that about other things, um, and I just reached out to him and said, "Hey Tim, I have an idea." I threw it at him. He answered me a few days later, said he was intrigued, but he wanted a little bit more information, so I gave that to him, and then he and I talked on the phone, and we talked for about an hour on the telephone about it. And he put me in contact with Jim Wampler. I don't know if you know who
Okay.
Jim is.
Oh yeah, we know Jim.
And Jim talked to me about it at great length. And then I talked to Tim again, and Tim said, "You know what? I'm happy to be a part of it." I mean, it was that easy. I mean, he Tim is a real. You have to understand. I think he's at the point where he doesn't have to sugarcoat. He's not going to sugarcoat things
No.
with you. He's going to
No.
be blunt. And I like that. And he asked a lot of blunt questions. I gave him a lot of blunt answers. And I kind of I didn't pressure. I just kind of threw it at him and just let him in his own time think about it. And he decided to jump on the project.
That's pretty exciting because again, I've known Tim for years, and I have basically worked on Tim on a community issue project that was very interesting, and I've also been at the receiving end of a tongue lashing by Tim after he had his chemo, and I didn't know why I was getting tongue lashed until I realized, and I'm also a cancer survivor. I had chemo, and Tim was having what I had gone through too, an episode of chemo brain, and he thought I was somebody else. Somebody, I think it was Bill Webb. He thought he was giving a tongue lashing to, which was fine.
He thought you were Bill Webb, yes.
Yeah. I wasn't wearing a raincoat, and I wasn't there in my pajama pants at a convention. But if you've never met Bill, it is pure Bill, and somehow Bill pulls that off. But again, I've known Tim for years, and he's been nothing if not 100% honest in his opinions. He's not gonna he's not gonna sugarcoat. He's not gonna blow smoke. He's going to tell you exactly what he thinks. And the fact that he's on board with this project, to me, tells a lot. Because, again, Tim, he's not somebody that's going to be just come aboard to be aboard. It's like, oh, this will make me look good. He doesn't give a shit about that.
Well, you're right. And the thing is one of the first things he wanted kind of samples of the existing cards. He wanted to see the game, because, of course, his name's going to be attached to it.
Right.
And I sent him several sample cards via Facebook and such, and he looked at them. And what I really liked about the whole experience with Tim is I like his honesty. And he's like, we can make this better. We can go ahead and we can make these descriptions better. And he's like, can you send me all of it? And I sent him every single card, all laid out exactly what the text was. So what he's going to do is he's going to take the existing card descriptions, but he's going to cascade them. He's going to go ahead and he's going to put his own spin on them, is what he's going to do. So in effect, what I'm benefiting from and what game players are going to benefit from is it's not just him taking hard copy and saying, ABC.
Right.
He's putting his own creative spin on it. And I think, with his background, pedigree, whatever you want to call it, the game is just benefiting so greatly from him and his knowledge and his help.
It's funny because I think the first time I got to see anything similar to this get done was years ago in DDO when they had Gary Gygax do the voiceover for one of the adventures that you could stumble into. And, Gary did like the room descriptions and it was exciting because it was Gary Gygax. Here's the man a founder of the hobby, doing something that made the game more interactive. And now, not only is Tim going to rewrite or castify or the descriptions, but he's going to be reading them out loud. Now, how did you think of getting somebody like Tim to do basically a voiceover for a board game?
Okay, I was a big fan of, I don't know if you, well, I know you remember it. It's a game called Zork.
Oh God, yes.
And I used to play the game a lot. And there was also a card, or not a card, it was a book series by TSR back in the day, Endless Adventures. And I originally was going to do some type of endless adventure type thing. And I was working on D20 Delving, and I had the book that I'm working on up in another screen. And I had an idea about, wouldn't it be cool to somehow involve some way, something for people that, would make it more visceral, make it more fun. So the idea was behind it was just to simply, why not have, and it's not, and this is the key distinction here, it's not a required part of the game to play. This is just a bonus if you want to experience it. So what's going to happen is this. There's going to be a dedicated website for D20 Delving. It's going to be at d20delving.com. And it's going to be all about the game. While you're playing the game, inside the game, there is a QR card. And you can take your phone, smart device, or manually type in the address. And you can go to it, you select the card, and you will hear Tim read the card, is what will happen. Now, Tim is doing some other readings for it. Like there is a backstory to the game. So when players play the game, they can read this backstory, and it puts them basically on the stage of why are they in this dungeon to begin with. So Tim's going to read that. And so Tim's going to have the introduction to the game. And then when players are within the game, if they run into an encounter, they pick an encounter card up and they pick it up, they can either read it or they can go bloop. They can scan it, and it'll go ahead and it'll read the card to them. So to me, it serves another purpose that I really want to do with Tim. Is it'll be almost like it'll be another way that people can honor his legacy. People like Tim Kask and people like, and Dave Arneson and, Jim Ward, all these men and women who had integral parts in what I grew up loving and have affected me. I mean, Wizard Tower Games wouldn't be around if it wasn't for D&D.
Right.
This is a way that we can honor people like Tim Kask and such, because, and I'm not wishing any ill will, but long after Tim is gone, there's going to be some kid playing D20 Delving, and they're going to go, boop, and they're going to hear him.
Right.
So I just thought that was really cool.
To some extent, that's our generation's immortality. Whether it's and not even our generation's watching movies, right? You watch movies, the first movies, you can see, John Wayne, and it's like, all right, well, I never met the man, never had a chance to meet him, but I can watch his movies and appreciate him. To be able to hear Tim Kask, there aren't too many ways to hear Tim Kask. You can go to his YouTube channel, certainly, but I mean, to hear Tim be an interactive part of the game is exciting. It's fun.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. I know a lot of people doing Kickstarters, and I rarely bother to hit the notify on launch, because I'm always like, I check a couple of days anyway. Yeah. This is one of the ones that I like notify on launch, because I wanted to make sure I wasn't the first, I was the second backer, but I wanted to get in early because it means something to me. Mm-hmm. And it means something because I've always enjoyed games like this, which are less competition, a bit more, is it cooperative, or is it not competitive, right?
Well, that's the unique part about the game. You can team up with a fellow player to try to gain the 7 relics, or you can go ahead and go independent. So there is cooperative play. I mean, people can team up.
So that's cool. So I mean that allows you to play pretty much solo or with a few players. It gives a lot of this could be. Listen, when I gamed, if we didn't have our minimum group, which was usually 4 players plus the DM, you pulled out other stuff, and it was either Risk, Chaos Marauders, which I don't think many people remember, but was a great card game. Occasionally, we would pull out Talisman, but Talisman was a fun game that you could probably never finish in a sitting anyway.
Yeah.
And
that's the important part about this game. Actually, it was kind of funny you mentioned that, because that is actually the impetus of the game. It is the fact that, me growing up, I played D&D a lot, and here everybody's here to play the game, and you got some guy that doesn't show up, and you're like, what do we do? We used to always yank out Risk or Access and Allies. That was our 2 go-tos. But the whole idea behind this game was what do you do when Susie doesn't show up or Steven doesn't show up? I want this to be able to broken out, because the game also, you can adjust the timeline of the game. You can make the game short as long as you want, real easy.
So that's something that modern gamers, our generation, maybe not. I've reached retirement age. I'm retired, but when you're working, when you have the family and time restraints, every hour you have available to game is important, and flexibility is important to that. I learned that my Monday night group is on hiatus right now because of the summer, because trying to get people all matched up is a problem. Now, it's an online group, so this would not necessarily be an option for us, although I forget what what's the name of that tabletop simulator? Was it tabletop simulator that can simulate board games and stuff? I've never ventured into that one, but
you're right.
But I'd be interesting to check that out. Now, the art looks really good. Can I ask you where you found your artist or artists? I mean, I know some people like to keep that stuff.
No, you're absolutely fine with that. The artwork that I used was, I went ahead and I was really wanting to use some really good artwork. I didn't want cheap art. I wanted something real big quality, but I don't have $100,000 budget for this copy. So what I did was I went on ArtStation of all places, and I just started looking at the artwork, what has the flavor that would fit the game. And I found a guy by the name of Matt Forsyth. He's from Auckland, New Zealand. He's an artist. He's a concept artist. And I reached out to him. I said, hey, my name's Don from Wizard Tower Games. I want to go ahead and I want to throw a proposition at you. I want to know, how much do you want for me to use some of your artwork? And, what are your requirements? And, typical, and I don't blame him. At first he's like, well, what is it? Can you give me your idea? And I threw the concept at him. And like with everybody so far I've talked to who's on board with this, is as soon as he got the concept of the game, he's like, holy shit, that's really unique. Tell you what, I'm game, man. You let me know what you want to use. So he gave me the link to his portfolio. I went in and I said, hey, I'd love to use this, use that. And he was like, you know what? You got it. So that's how I got the character art for D20 Delving.
Wow.
And Matt Forsyth is a hell of a nice guy. Like I say, he's from New Zealand, does a lot of concept art for several companies he's done work for. And here I am, this little guy that comes along, and I'm like, hey, can I pay for some of your art and use it? And he's like, oh, let me take a look at this game first. And once he saw it, he was like, yeah.
So now, D20 Delving. What was the impetus? What brought you to this? Is the game I want to make. This is what I want. I mean, you're also going. You're not half-assing it for the pieces. The pieces are going to include 3D printed minis.
Yes.
So it would mean that I guess we won't be having a bunch of meeples and Parcheesi pieces.
We are a no meeple zone with D20 Delving. In fact, all of the board games that we produce that are going to have some type of token, if it represents a figure or a character, it will be 3D printed. That's just going to be what we're going to do. So and the impetus of the game,
yeah.
The impetus of the game is this. I'm old fashioned in one way. My favorite kind of game is a good dungeon adventure. That's what I love to do. And I've played Gloomhaven, love the game, but it's such a massive beast of a game, And I was like, how do you translate those, again, back to the D&D players? You're there. You don't want to play Risk. You don't want to play Axis and Allies. You want to play an adventure. You want to play D&D. So when you don't have people showing up, and that was kind of the impetus of it. I was like, you know what? I want to take a role-playing game, and I want to make it into a board game. I want the closest way that I can make it into a board game possible. And that is actually I haven't announced this yet, so I guess I'm going to do it right now. I had a role-playing game pretty much fully written, and I was going to be releasing it, and I was like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to do D20 Delving. I'm taking the characters, all the characters, the kingdoms, the lands, and everything in the pre-story and all that are based off of my writings and my world that I created from my gaming many, many decades ago. God, decades. I'm saying decades.
Feeling the age, huh? Feeling the age.
Yep. So that was the episode. I wanted an RPG with a board game.
So now I'm looking at the board, and hopefully folks at home can see it clearly enough. But this looks like a board with multiple options, multiple directions. You're not just going around like on Talisman.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty unique design, at least going back to what we were playing when we were in our 20s. Although Talisman, I guess now you can play on your computer. But that is more like I'm pointing at my second screen and you can't see my hand doing it. But that on the screen is more what a dungeon would be like. It's what players You're going to go behind this door. You're going to take the corridor to your right. You're going to backtrack. Apparently, players aren't put onto a track like a lot of board games do.
No, you're not. The whole idea behind Dungeon Crawl is just like a real dungeon. If me, you, and Mike are in a dungeon together, and Mike wants to go south and I want to go east, and you say, no, you both are crazy, I'm going north, you can do it. And in D20 Delving, that's the whole idea behind the game. Players can split off. You don't have to play follow the leader. That really makes no sense in these kind of games to me because, you're within 6 of each other. You're going to follow each other around the board. There's, and this is where it's exactly what it is. This is a dungeon. Now, in the next game, the expansion, because this game is going to have expansions where there's other less expensive, but it's an entirely new type of game. There's going to be caverns. There's going to be city blocks. There's going to be tombs. There's going to be wilderness sections. But that's the whole point of the game. Go where you want. You don't have to play follow the leader. I always hated that playing games.
Oh God, yeah, and to go where you want. It's almost like, dare I say it, you're sandboxing it. It's a sandboxy board game.
Yeah.
Well, there's a couple of things I wanted to bring up real quick.
Yeah.
and this is just me being an asshole. Probably. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But you posted a shipping thing on there. That kind of worries me a little bit because, man, shipping's scary right now. Are you sure? Because I was looking at the domestic shipping for the core game. It's $14, which is a really good price.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm honestly wondering how you can ship that cheap, because it's not media mail, right? You can't ship this media mail.
No, you can't ship it media mail. Basically, what we did is we took the box size, okay, and you can't fit it inside of a U.S. Postal Service, who we're shipping by, has, they have their priority mail, set rate boxes. If you can fit it in this box, it ships for X amount of bucks.
Yeah.
So what I did is we took the anticipated primary package weight, and I said I'm going to do a calculation of how much to ship this to Los Angeles, California, because I'm in Michigan. So we got that dollar amount. Now, to make it a little bit less expensive, is we're going to eat a little bit on the shipping. And the reason why we're going to eat a little bit on the shipping is because we know how shipping is. It's really hard to kind of gauge a specific rate. If it could fit into a flat rate box, I could say it's $14.95, no matter where it goes. So, some places, and this is just the reality of it. I know it might upset some people, but, some places we ship to, like if you live in Cleveland, Ohio, and I'm shipping to you from Battle Creek, Michigan, it's going to be less than $14. But if I'm shipping it to Anchorage, Alaska, it might be $17, $18, $19, and I'm going to have to eat that. So it's kind of like a balance. Everything's kind of fleshing everything out is what it is. So that's how we calculated it out.
I just don't want you to get stuck, because Eric and I talk about this all the time. One of the most prevalent reasons Kickstarters fail is because shipping. It's because people don't. Oh, I can ship anywhere in the world for $10, and then 2 years later, when they're through, it's like, oh, shipping went up 500%.
No,
yeah.
No. I'll tell you what. I learned. I learned real well about that, because I got on and I looked at all these successful Kickstarters and the ones that were delayed and the ones with problems, and the commonalities here, shipping, and frankly, just, asking for money when you don't have a game done. I mean, and I'm gonna tell you about game design. In your, nothing's an ideal world, and you guys have done game design. This. I mean, you think I'll have this done by Thursday next week. No, you're not. It might take another 3-4 weeks, because, to coin a phrase, shit happens. I mean, things happen. And that's why, I even did the whole thing of going, I'm not putting this thing out until this is done. I could have done a Kickstarter back in, June of last year. And I was like, nope, I'm not doing this until the only thing I have to do is go ahead and make it. And I was like, you know what? And it was actually an auction down in Toledo, Ohio. I was like, I'm going to bind my own books. I'm not going to rely on a binder. And I went down there to buy a binding machine on auction, and there was other machinery there. I was like, ooh, I can make this stuff. So
basically, you cut out the middleman on that part, and as long as you have the base components, that once the design is ready to go, it's in your hands, right?
This is one of the biggest problems right now in the game design field, and there are several game manufacturers out there in the stateside that are having these issues, and that is, they subcontract everything out because maybe there's something that they don't do, but they sell it. And the problem is, about the only place you can go if you're not going domestically to have a game made is China. And although they are very efficient and they put out a top-notch product, there's no question about the quality they put out. The problem is getting it to the States now, because container ships get backed up. They quote you one price and you don't read the fine print. And in the fine print, it says this quote is good for 10 days, And, we just saw the fiasco with, the other company asking for more money. I mean, they did that because what they did is they got burned because the shipping rates exploded. So that has been such a big thing with me. It's just been how do we cut out the middleman? How can we make this ourselves? And that's when I went down to Toledo because I had the intention of only doing books. And there's other equipment there, and I was just like, okay. And nobody's bidding on this stuff because nobody wants to do it. I mean, nobody needs a card cutter or a splitter or a splicer. They don't need that stuff. That's very specific, very targeted stuff to have.
Well, yeah, and that's a familiar story too. I mean, this isn't a one-off. This is a lot. I mean, the recent Kickstarter that Eric and I have talked about, that I forget the name every time we talk about it, about how they're going, people go, hey, we can't ship this. We need some more money. And by the way, if you don't give us money, we're not going to ship your item because too bad, so sad.
Well, one of the was it the Apotheos? One of the Jameson Kickstarters was like, yeah, we're going to ship to the U.S., but overseas is going to have to wait. Once you're telling any region you're going to have to wait, it's basically saying you better be asking for your charge back right now because you're not going to be getting it. Well, there's a cash flow problem going on right now.
And that's the fundamental thing about the nature of this kind of business is, and I'm talking domestically, is, when people look at your Kickstarter, and this is how I looked at this, is they look at your Kickstarter, and I'm not the only board game on Kickstarter. There's thousands of other board games out there that are on Kickstarter. And when they entrust you with their money, when they say, here's my money, I want my product, if you can't deliver it for 6 months, all these companies know when they can realistically deliver it. And I think the problem with some is that they hedge, they overpromise.
Right.
And what I would rather do is I would rather underpromise and overdeliver. And that was the whole theory behind this. This game was really geared up and about halfway done June of last year. And when I finished it back in September and I started playtesting, the urge was there. Let me kickstart this right before Christmas. Let me kickstart. I was like, nope, I'm not doing this shit. I'm not going to kickstart this because what if something happens down the line? And so I waited and I waited 11 months, 9 months, because if I tell you I'm going to ship this game in mid to late November, I can guarantee you everybody supporting that campaign is going to be expecting a tracking number mid to late November. And I owe it to them. I should be a person of my word, especially as a game company.
Right. And first impressions are what's going to make or break. I mean, if you take money and people think that, oh, it's going to be shipping in, I don't know, weeks or months.
Yep.
And it's a half year later and it still hasn't been printed.
Yep. And that's the thing. It's like the module we made. We made that. We printed it. And for those people who have bought it, who are watching this, you see the quality that we put out. But also the other half of that most important thing, along with quality of product, we shipped it immediately because you are owed that.
Right.
This isn't you owe us. No, we owe you, the customer, period.
Well, people forget that, right? It's without your customers, you don't have a business. If you alienate your customers, whether through poor service or
Tom Verrell, to his credit, in Tabletop Tap Room, did a video just the other day about this T-shirt maker on Facebook.
Oh my God! I saw the second installment today.
Playing games with people. I mean, it's $30, but still, I mean, you can either do it half-ass, you can do it right, or you can sit there and you can do something in the middle. And I don't even know what the hell's going on with that bit, but I'll guarantee you, it's this game that some retailers play, and you need to promptly deliver what was purchased. And you need to promptly make sure that your promises and your assurances are followed through with. Period. End of story.
James Seymour wants to know, did you uncover any unexpected problems by waiting to Kickstart?
No, actually, it was a very smart thing to do because in my mind, and I'm going to go back to last June of 2021. June of 2021, I'm sitting here with the game half done. I had it mapped out right down to the T. I mean, I had this thing mapped out on next phase starts in there, next phase starts here. And I learned as you're doing this, as you're bringing the game forth, you talk to people, you engage people that offer ideas and suggestions and rule suggestions, so your timelines that start here end up being right up here, then up here, then up here. So actually it was quite the contrary. It was best to wait until the game was done to do the Kickstarter. And that's going to be our philosophy, period, as a company. We will never ever do a Kickstarter unless the game is completed and ready to go, period.
Well, that's kind of like Joe Block, the Greyhawk Grognard. He's done some amazing RPG products.
Good stuff.
But Joe, and I consider Joe a decent friend. We met in Manhattan last month for the complete. Joe will not kickstart stuff until everything is written. He kickstarts to fund the art.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, his art budget is decided by the Kickstarter, but everything else is. So then all it is plugging the art in as he gets it and laying it out. But he goes, but the product has to be written. If it's not written, he's not going to kick it off. Now that's wise, and I don't think Joe has been late on a Kickstarter yet. I think they've all
and that's the danger, Eric. I mean, the thing is it's. I mean, I'm not knocking people who want to do a Kickstarter before. I mean, if you're doing the Kickstarter for the sake of we need to develop this game, then you need to go ahead and let people know that. And number two, and this is just my opinion, if you in your mind as a developer say, I'll have this game done by January 1, 2023, you really need to put 6 months on that. I mean, you really do. You need to go ahead, whatever you think, add time to it and add a huge padding to it. Because, again, I think that although you may lose people because people don't want to wait, the people that you gain and the people that trust you, they would much rather wait and have you follow what you claim than not.
That makes perfect sense. What? Dandelion Games, the author of the Smoking Worm zine, bought his binding printing equipment at an auction too.
Yeah, this machine ain't going to an auction to anything. I mean, this thing is these binding machines. I don't know what kind he had, but this binding machine is massive. It weighs 1,100 pounds.
Oh Jesus!
Yeah, I can't do hard binding, but I can do soft binding, and I can do up to 700 pages. So, but these are commercial machines that we have.
Damn.
Yeah.
That to me is just huge. But in any case, going back to the Kickstarter now, we know who did the character cards. The internal art though looks awesome too.
Yes,
and it has a unique flavor to it. It's almost like you're setting your mark on these because the artwork is consistent. It's a little gonzo, but not a lot gonzo.
Yeah.
Just enough to make you feel. So I'm going to ask again: where did you find the art?
And again, this is all about just getting creative with your sourcing. With a game like D20 Delving, every encounter card has a piece of art. Every loot card has a piece of art. Then you have all the ancillary cards and such. I have all played a thing called Graphic River. And Graphic River is part of a company called Envato. They are out of Australia. And basically
like this on the far side of the pond, I guess.
Oh, very far, yeah. And what you can do is you go there, and there are artists that put their works up for both commercial use and private use. And what you do is you pay a commercial art fee to them, and you can use specific art for one commercial project. So that's what I did. I wanted to make sure that number one, that you have a budget, and I don't have a ton of money to put into this kind of stuff, but I wanted to make it look like literally it had $100,000 put into it. So I just started reaching out. I started asking people that work in the field also and say, hey, listen, do you have any suggestions? I don't have a huge budget, but I want, good quality. And they said, go there. You got to look for the commercial stuff, and make sure you purchase your commercial licenses, and you can purchase the commercial licenses.
Well, I got to say the art looks good. It's consistent.
Mm-hmm.
It's quality. The icons,
yep,
look really nice. You can actually see my mouth parsing across.
I have one kind of uncomfortable question. I'm sorry, I'm the one asking all the uncomfortable questions.
No, cool, man.
Hey. I've noticed there's some spelling mistakes here. Is this going to be corrected before the game goes to print?
First of all, Cask is looking at every single loot card and encounter card. Number one, okay, that's a given. Number two, before this game actually goes into print, because Cask is doing some changes to the cards right now as I speak. He has them. He's going to be doing his own little spin. This is going to be walked through by a competent editor line by line for the game itself, because I get it. I'm one set of eyes. I write I've written books, and you when you're making it, you are so close to it, and it's so easy to overlook it.
Everybody does it because I've done it. I've read a manuscript over that I've had for 7 years, and then I put it away for 5 years and pulled it out, and I immediately saw like five mistakes.
I have a really good friend named Stephen Lake. He is he's an IT guy, but his big jam pot is he writes sci-fi novels called the Earthly Saga, and him and I laugh about it all the time. He's like, oh, I started this book, Don. Guess what? I just went back through it. I'm getting ready to publish it. Holy shit. You ought to see all the screw ups I did. And it's the same thing with me. I look at stuff that I've went through it and I haven't found nothing. And then I wait even something like a month and I go back through it and I'm like, I cannot believe I missed that. My wife's a school teacher, she all the time, even says, about editing. Editing's critical, So yes, you're judged by this. And one thing I don't want to have happen is, I'm not going to use things like, Microsoft Spell Check or Grammarly to go ahead and do my spell checking on this stuff. I'm going to go ahead and I already have an editor lined up. She is actually a line editor. It's what she does.
Well, I mean, those things aren't bad for a first run through, because they'll point out a few things.
Right.
Yeah, you're not going to at some point you got to have a human being at some point do it.
Well, that's just it. This stuff right here, when you're developing a game and you're play testing, you know what? I don't care about this. I mean, I do care about spelling. Don't get me wrong, but it's not production level. So all through all the play testing and all through all the different versions we've burned through on this thing and changed and modified. When you have the final product, and that's what's going to be production, this is it. This is the game. You really need to get somebody in there who, not your cousin's brother who's good at spelling. You need to really get someone who's a competent editor. And I'm going to tell you what, personal opinion to those who are aspiring writers or aspiring game designers, get an editor who is an editor. Money well spent. Because your editor will make you look good.
Well, it's pretty well, and Grammarly probably will not.
And that's one of the problems in the last few years is a lot of people that are on a budget think, I don't need an editor because they've got Grammarly, they've got spell check, I've got all these mechanical things that are going to help me. I'm just going to run the manuscript through that. It's going to find it for me, and I'm going to be golden. I won't have to hire an editor. And you're right, that's a huge mistake to do that.
Well, Grammarly is so clinical. Number one, you have to set Grammarly up for what you're doing. And I'll admit, I have Grammarly. I've looked at it. The problem with Grammarly is when you look at all the settings, there's nothing for game design, game rules, nothing like that. And all these things are very unique. It's instructional. It's like a rule book. If if I'm writing a rule on how to go from A to Z, that's far different than if I'm telling you the story of how to go from A to Z. And it's just they're great tools if you're writing a term paper, but they're not good tools for this type of thing. Not at
Sure.
James Seymour has a question. Now that you have the equipment, are you going to just, I guess, produce your own work, or have you thought about hiring yourself out?
I've thought about this real long and hard. We have a new website getting ready to go live it's going to probably be going live in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And one of the services we're going to offer to take your game and make it for you, sort of like a game crafter, And we're the whole thing here is I think just the time is ripe to do that, and we're just going to see how it goes. I mean, we're not going to continue to do it if it's going to inflict an issue with our own work. But initially, if we have a small self-publisher come to us and says, "Hey, man, I got a problem. I got a card game, 300 cards to the card game. I need like 50 copies for my Kickstarter. Can you do it for me?" Absolutely. And one of the things we'll do is we'll sign an NDA. We'll sign a complete release. We already have an attorney that drafted all that paperwork up just in case you're worried about us being a game company taking your idea. No, I can tell anyone that even has a caution about that. Trust me, if we print your game, we'll print your game. We're not interested in your game. We have right now a ton of stuff in the pipeline. So absolutely, James, we're going to go ahead and do stuff for other people if they want us to.
George, the devil's in the details, and that shows detail and dedication. Great points. I don't remember George from prior live stream, so George, welcome. Mm-hmm. Robert, one common source of mistakes are edits themselves. Once a text gets several passes, and the remaining errors are last pass quick edits that go wrong. And listen, as somebody who did Swords of Wizardry Light and thought I did a decent job of proofing myself, but I wound up submitting it. I think there's still like 1 or 2 minor errors in those 4 pages of the original print that got missed by an actual editor because none of us are perfect. The idea, though, is when you edit yourself, you want to catch the most glaring mistakes, hopefully. But the problem is you're reading it because you already know what it's supposed to say. Your mind fills in the blanks. It's just
it does.
It's just like writing. The difference between writing an adventure for your home campaign and writing one for publication. You write it for your home campaign. It's a bunch of randomish notes, but they're all there to spark something in your mind that brings you to the next point, and it's fine for you. And it's totally unpublishable because that is not what other people can work off of. So you have to address things differently. So, the whole self-editing is. I regard self-editing as Grammarly will hopefully catch my spelling mistakes, but it's never going to catch my grammar mistakes. Yep. Grammarly is a wrong thing to call it, honestly.
Well, it's like when I had my publishing company. I had a young woman who her name was Hannah. She was my editor, and I had an elderly woman named Janice who was an editor, and they echoed the same thing you just said, Eric. But there's another key to editing that you have to embrace is you have to realize that, if you're going to hire an editor, it's a team effort. You got to put your ego off to the side. This is not about Don. I am the master of Wizard Tower games. Hear me roar. You have to trust the people that are working for you or working with you. But you also need to keep on top of it. So you just can't hand it to them. They edit it and say, "Did you edit it?" "Yes, I did." "Okay, put it in print." No, you need to constantly be revisiting it, relooking at it. And then you take that edited copy and you play test that. Because sometimes something can change. And I'll tell you what, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, especially with you two and your guys' knowledge on game development, but an edit can actually change a rule.
Yep.
Depending how they do it. So you got to be careful.
Well, especially if you're using an editor that isn't. It's an advantage of using an editor that is not game savvy.
Oh yes.
There's an advantage to it because they will catch things that a gaming editor will inadvertently fill in the blanks for.
Yep.
But at the same time, they'll say, "Oh, this doesn't work. This isn't proper
Yeah.
English. Well, it's proper English in RPG English, which is not necessarily the same as other English."
Yep.
We had Douglas Cole on the other week, and Douglas used to do um, video interviews going back years. I was one of his first, I don't know, 8, 9 years ago, and he would pay somebody to transcribe them. Wasn't cheap,
Mm-hmm.
but and it was difficult until the person started getting the RPG lingo down
Mm-hmm.
because we speak our own vernacular. We write in our own vernacular
Yep.
and sub vernaculars depending on the game system. And I think people forget that. And once you step outside the hobby, it's certainly not realized, but it is a different world.
Well, that's an interesting point because, like, as an example, mainly what I personally write is I write fantasy, and I wrote one crime murder mystery, but I write fantasy. Now, my wife, my wife's a school teacher, been teaching for 20 some odd years. She is not into fantasy. She doesn't watch Conan the Barbarian. She doesn't play, she plays RPGs or games with me once in a while, but she is basically a farm girl, grown up on a farm. Fantasy's not her jam. I'll have her read my books because it's really cool because she'll read it and she starts tearing it apart because she doesn't understand something.
Yep.
So she'll get into it and she'll really go into it and say, well, I don't understand why you said this. And I don't know how many times she's caught errors by me because, again, I'm so close to it. It just editing is just critical. I mean, if you're not editing your work, you're going to look like a fool when it goes into print because there are people out there that will tear your work apart, and they will.
James Seymour, are there editors who specialize in just games and design? Yes, there are, but they're usually already signed by a company. They've found their home, and you're probably unless you have a personal connection to them, they probably don't have time on their plate and their schedule to work with another party. I tell you right now that Troller Games, Frog Guy Games, Goodman Games, they've all have experienced RPG editors that do this. But it can also be something that you can learn how to do, but editing ain't easy. And it's probably underpaid.
Well, it's like my editor. She wants a copy of the game, the playtest, because she wants to go ahead and set it up and look at it. And as she's editing all the content, she wants to be able to see it and learn how to play it to understand it. So she's helping us also with how to iterate those rules in a manner that people can learn by. And that was something my wife's real good on because my wife teaches at a Montessori school.
Oh,
and for those of you who don't know what Montessori is not your typical public school, in the front door, out the back. Montessori is all about tactile learning, unique learning at your own pace, so it's kind of like a really different way of teaching kids because kids learn by what interests them. So, and actually games are used in Montessori to teach.
Interesting. Well, I mean, the best way to have something like this play tested is going to be somebody who isn't part of the design team actually running it because then that's when you see, are these rules clear? Are they not clear? What's missing? Not missing?
And I'm going to do a shout out right now to one of the best helps to us, and that is the Broken Sword Game Shop up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Those guys up there were so welcoming, so enthused about it, gave such great feedback on it. They're on Facebook, so I encourage people to go check them out if you're in the Michigan area. But they're called the Broken Sword, and I'll tell you what, they're a small little mom and pop. Young couple owns it, but I'll tell you, they were very welcoming to us and gave excellent feedback on it.
Nice. Dandelion Games. It's tough to now, and I've seen this happen. It's tough too when the editor looks at the manuscript, but when you get through layout, you have to change some things up, and it causes errors the editor didn't get to see.
Yeah.
You can have that problem, and then you can also have the problem that when you have a basic layout, editor goes in, changes stuff, and now your layout's all fucked up.
Yep, that's true.
It's like they added too many. There was a reason why we weren't adding. This was very terse. It's because it's what fit at the bottom of the page, and now we're going to find some way to make it work.
Yep.
James Seymour, Montessori, is that immersion?
No, what Montessori is Montessori is it's a learning theory. Montessori is the lady's name who created she's an Italian lady. And back in the early 1920s, she saw that children at orphanages were not being taught. They didn't believe education was important. And when she visited an orphanage, she saw that what children were doing was they were taking their breadcrumbs from lunch and they were making things on the table like little mini games, and they were learning by that. So what she did is she kind of put the concept in that children will tactilely learn. Instead of throwing a book in front of you, Mike, and saying, Mike, read chapters. We're going to work on chapters 1 and 2 this week, and then we're going to have a test at the end of the week, like public school.
Right.
Montessori is more like, we're going to learn about chapter 1, but what we're going to do is we're going to make games about it. We're going to go ahead and we're going to create something within the chapter. We're going to get you thinking about it and tactilely working with it. And my wife was a public school teacher for 20 years. And my wife got into Montessori and was like, this is like how she wanted to teach all along. Very, very high success rate with Montessori Academy children on their test scores, their graduation rates, their retention rates, and all that.
That's interesting. It reminds me, I think I was in 3rd grade when the school district wanted to put me into a specialized school. It sounds a lot like that, with a lot of independent learning and your own track and all that stuff. And in 3rd grade, I said to myself, if I do this, knowing my attention span, I am going to screw this up real bad. Let me just stay in.
Well, that's the whole thing with Montessori is you'll have a classroom of 25 kids. But you may have a group of kids over here that are on chapter 4 of whatever they're learning.
Right.
But over there, you have a bunch of kids on chapter 12 of what they're learning. It's all at your own pace. Go as you go. And that's actually helped me with the rule set of this, because I know that, I'm saying, at least I'm this way. I don't want to buy a freaking game and have to take 6 weeks to freaking learn it because the rule book's, 250 pages thick. I want to get into the game very quickly, rapidly, and get playing it. And that's kind of how we kind of did the rules also with D20 Delving, is we wanted to make the rule set very quick to learn, very, very easy. So we have like a fast up and running sheet that we're also going to have in the game, where if you want to just get going real quick.
Well, it's good, because at my age, when I was young, when I was in my teens and my 20s, I could learn a new game system in a weekend, right? Be ready to play it, and Star Master, Space Ace, Chill, this, whatever new system the players wanted, ready to go. Now I am like, if it is longer than a dozen or two dozen pages, unless it's based on something I already know, I don't even want to look at it, because it's just, I don't have the time, the patience, or the inclination to read something or learn something that's going to be very heavy and new. Again, D20 Delving seems to be aiming for that sweet spot of, it's new, but it's not so heavy, but it has a lot of options. Yeah. So,
well, it's the kind of game that no two games are the same with it. I mean, you are, the way it works is you roll a 4-sided dice and you move. And then when you're done moving, you roll a 20-sided dice. And that 20-sided dice is going to tell you if you have an encounter, you find loot, or you don't have anything at all happen. And so every time it's not like standard games are where square A does what square A does. No matter how many
Right.
times you land on it, that's what it does. The game is so fluid and ever changing. And the whole theory behind it also is expandable. I mean, you can buy an expansion pack, but use it with a different board that you like, because it's just loot, encounter cards, and such. I mean, it sounds real simple, but it's really, you really have to be skilled in, what equipment am I keeping? What spells am I going to keep? How am I going to arm myself? How am I going to, keep, what weapons do I want to use? Because that matters. So, I mean, I'm proud of the game. I mean, I think it's a really cool game, and I know I made it, but I'm really proud of what I did here with it.
Very cool. James wants to know why so many game designers come from northern states. Is it the long, cold winters?
I
That's
think,
probably.
yeah, it's, I don't know. I've always gamed. I lived overseas a lot when I was a kid. I was a military brat, and then my dad retired, and he got, he's a helicopter pilot, so he took a job with several foreign companies. So we've lived all over, but that's the funny thing. Everywhere I've moved to, no matter where it's been, there's always been a D&D group as a kid. Always. Or a gaming group, or some type of group that did something at a table together.
Well, I think that D&D or gaming is like that great common denominator. You can go into any larger community. If you can find gamers, then you've got a connection. You have something that's in common. You've got something that you can bond over, and you can jump into a group like that pretty quickly because you know the basic social etiquette of gamers, which a lot of people claim is a lack of social etiquette. But in any case, it gives you that start. It's like if you walk into a new bar, but you happen to recognize people from the neighborhood, you still have people you can talk to. But if you go into a new bar and you don't know anybody, you're going to be sitting at the corner of the bar, watching the TV and having a beer and being miserable. That connection, that gaming connection, it's huge. But so many communities have it. Law enforcement, firefighters have it. I even see it amongst people that are professional salesmen. They know their own banter, and it's their own dialect, their own language. They can share that. As gamers, we have that to share, which is a great thing about gaming conventions. That's why I go to gaming conventions less to game and more to socialize, to be honest.
Well, I mean, Gen Con's a prime example of it. If gaming was not popular, Gen Con wouldn't be a thing. Origins wouldn't be a thing. North Texas wouldn't be a thing. And this is where gaming is that common denominator. Like when I was younger, for a time we lived in Madison Heights, up in Madison Heights by Detroit, and in our gaming group, we had a guy who was on the football team, and I know it's kind of like a cliche, but he kind of had a rule. He'll game with us, but he wouldn't give us the time of day at school. But in that gaming group, he was a really cool guy. He wasn't a jerk. He was an asshole at school, but I mean, he wasn't one at the gaming table.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was weird how that would work too, right? It's like I can't admit that I'm a gamer in public, but in private, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Now, I have a question to ask you, going back to the board game, because there's an expansion that's coming out. It's a limited one, the Krampus expansion.
The Krampus pack.
Yes, the Krampus pack.
Yeah.
Folks, if you look, I'm backing for 110 because it includes the Krampus pack. And for a penny, and for a pound, I like this. By the way, I still remember my James Spawn's initial Frog God Christmas adventure, and it always makes me think of Krampus. So it was classic. So what inspired this? Because
All right. Originally, of course, there's an expansion in the works,
right,
and the expansion is unnamed, but basically the premise of it is I wanted to do something as an expansion really unique and off the wall. So what we're going to do is the Krampus pack is actually going to kind of coincide with the expansion, because the expansion is going to be if you take things like Christmas and Easter and other holidays and you just twist them and warp them. That's what it's going to be. Basically, it's going to be like a holiday land. I know it sounds kind of childish and cliche, but it's really not. I mean, it's, kind of take like Nightmare Before Christmas and put it on really weird LSD.
okay,
And, the Krampus pack, you're going to get 3 characters. You're going to get 18 loot cards, 18 character cards. It's kind of a mini expansion. It was special for Kickstarter. And you're going to get a set of cool, unique dice that go along with it that you can't just normally buy. So the Krampus pack is kind of just a fun thing that I wanted to throw in there with anticipating putting out the expansion that we're coming out with. So
Okay.
that's basically where it comes through.
because I see it has 3 limited edition figures, and
Yes.
of course that I've got way too many games with way too many figures, but this is manageable. It's not like the Conan board game, which
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to see if anybody wants to buy that from me at ShireCon, because I swear to God, I've got way too much.
You're finished. You're without. You're not there. You're through.
I gotta downsize. I gotta make room for games I'll actually play. Like Ogre, I will never play because I don't have like a basketball court where I can lay out the Ogre Kickstarter and play it. And I'm not gonna fly with it to North Texas so it can be played in a room.
Don't worry. I've got the Ogre Kickstarter. I've got the big version. And I've got the regular version, and I've got all the versions. So. Doug and I took the big version out once when he got Kickstarted. We built all the tanks, and we got all excited. We played it one time. We stuck it in the box. We never played it again because it's such a pain in the ass to get out all those giant tanks. But we have it. If you ever want to play it, in North Texas, Eric, let me know. I'll bring it up to the convention.
I might have to think about it. Foogly's in the room. George, yes. Tim Cass mentioned the Kickstarter on his last show. Well, listen, if Tim is talking it up, that tells you a lot too.
Well, I appreciate also, George. Thank you very much for supporting us.
And it's a short thing about Tim. Tim attended the first North Texas, and he went to every single one except for COVID years 2021. But he was here this year. And he said this was going to be his last one because of health reasons. He's really not traveling much anymore. He's had cancer, and he's had a lot of issues. And we inducted him into the North Texas Hall of Fame this year. We had our inaugural class. He was in there because he came to our first con. But just a really good guy, really good. He likes to support old school gaming, and he's just he is a really good dude.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're doing is once he's done looking at the cards, he's like I said, he has the copy right now. I'm going to be going down and recording him. That's when we're going to do the actual recording. So, we're going to go to him.
Can I ask you one question about that? So, when you call up, so if you scan the QR code and it dials up, where's all that kept at? Is there like a server? This is all Tim Cass for there.
It's going to be kept on a secure server that's dedicated to those recordings. So it's going to be a web page. It's going to be a web page you go to, and it's going to have like, Iron Flask, backpack, all the encounters, and you can manually go in and just, if someone wants to kill a couple hours, you can go in and manually just listen to them, read, because he's going to keep in mind, the card's going to say one thing, but Tim might enunciate a little bit differently just to make it more interesting and more kind of real, to make it Tim. So there will be a website.
I could get his dulcet tones. Can I just like put a phone there, put it on speaker, just lay back at night, just sleep to Tim.
You can go ahead and just meditate, man.
Yeah, I mean, I want to hear that. I just want to hear that for hour upon hour. I just want to keep it rolling.
I don't know. I don't know if it'll put you to sleep. I don't know if those dulcet tones will be the ones that sing you a lullaby, Mike.
But I'm gonna tell you something about Tim Kask, and this is where I see people sometimes selling him short online. You know, Tim is blunt. He is, but I'll tell you what, he is one hell of a nice man, and he is really supportive of people who are willing to go ahead and just be honest with him. You be honest with the guy. And that's kind of think what got us in it. I just laid down the line to him. I was like, "This is what it is. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Here it is." And he's like, "Well, I'm going to offer this opinion, this thought." And it's like, why wouldn't I accept your opinions, and why wouldn't I take your advice?
Right.
You've got 50 some odd years of experience in this stuff, and
Yeah,
I'll tell you what, he is such a cool guy to talk to and work with.
Oh, he is. I mean, my Tim and I connected when I started looking into Mike will remember this, the Gygax Memorial Fund, and that's when Tim reached out to me, and then we started doing Skype calls. And Tim is one hell of a resource, because you'll be amazed at what the knowledge that Tim has.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, "Tim, you ran a nonprofit?" He goes, "I ran a nonprofit back." It's like, you're like, holy stuff you don't expect from the average person, let alone Tim Kask. So when Tim gives you advice, even if you're not going to follow it, you should always listen to it, because even if you don't totally agree with it, I can guarantee you that there's something in there that's on track and useful. Maybe his perspective is different than yours, but and Tim is very loyal to the people that are in his circle.
Well, see, that's the thing about Tim. Tim may say something that maybe you don't fully agree with, but listen to it, because I'll guarantee you he's throwing some, because this is the thing I noticed about Tim. I think people, because he's so blunt, he just tells you how it is.
Right.
He says what's on his mind, but he doesn't do it to be mean. It's like with us, like with me talking to him on the phone, he was legitimately trying to help me. And you have to understand that, you're dealing with a man, he's not full of shit by any means. He's not bragging. Tim is it. Tim did it. So listen to the man. And even though, like you just said, even though you may not agree with everything he says, you can definitely pull things out that'll definitely help you if you have an open mind with him.
Yeah. No, I am blessed for the time that Tim and I spent together looking into the Gygax Memorial Fund, because he brought me in I'm a trained investigator, and he brought me in directions that I would not have thought of looking in, because he knew the angles. He kind of like again, he's a very deep well of knowledge.
Oh yeah.
The
well-meaning knowledge too. He cares.
He gives it to you, but yes, he cares, and he cares about his friends. He's somebody. If you say something or threaten one of his friends, Tim's not an enemy I would like.
No.
You don't want to. Again, having been on the receiving end of an angry Tim, and it wasn't even me that he was angry at. I could only imagine how I would have felt if I were the actual target that he thought he was targeting, because God bless the man. He like I say, he doesn't hold back. So folks, if you look at the bottom of this page, I think I said this at the beginning, but I'm going to repeat it. On the bottom is my shortened link to the D20 Delving board game Kickstarter, tankcars-tavern.games/D20 Delving. You can go there. That's how you can get a good read as to what this game is about, how you can back it, the levels you can back it at. Like I said, I'm in for the Krampus pack, because that's how I roll, and I figured it'd be fun. Now, I know it says ages 14 plus, My niece is 11. I suspect that she, with us guiding her with it, she can.
You know, the whole age thing. Okay, everybody has different ideas of what's appropriate for, let's just say, a 11-year-old. You
Right.
know, we put 14 on it just because of the fact that it does have violence in it. You got to kill
You're
monsters.
killing things and taking their shit. You're a bunch of murder
Yes.
hobos.
So we put a safe age range on it. But
Right.
in all honesty, I'll tell you what, I'm a father of 4 daughters. I'm very protective of my girls. But if one of my girls was 10, 11 years old, I wouldn't have a problem with her playing this game. I
Yeah.
mean, there's nothing inappropriate in it or anything like that, really. But again, every parent's different,
Right.
and I respect that. But so we went ahead, we looked at the age range. You know, we went ahead and we had a study done on it to go ahead and look at age range, look at the fact of learnability by age, and it came out right about 13 and a quarter. So we just said, let's just make it 14. So
Fair enough.
we've invested in that too. So it was just want to make sure it's done right.
Nice. I mean, my niece is the one that when she was 5.5, and I almost just short of being 6, and I showed her my copy of Swords and Wizardry Light. And I went, Shannon, do you know what this is?
Yep.
And she went right away. She's like, Uncle, that's D&D in 4 pages. I'm like,
Yeah.
Pretty much. She goes, you can teach me to read 4 pages, and then I can play D&D. That's all she wanted to know.
Yep.
That's all she was concerned about. So
well, that's why we had a pedagogical study done on it. That was the whole purpose of it, was to go ahead and to check the learnability of it by age range. It's since there's no cursing or cussing in it or whatnot in the game. There's no foul language in it. So the whole core issue of the game was just what is the appropriate for learning, independent learning for the game.
See, now I'm going to throw this out there. I don't think there are many game designers or game publishers that take those steps in their games. I think that's something that's maybe it's unique to your background, maybe it's unique to your family, but I don't think a lot of publishers are going to go, all right, let me get a study done to see how age appropriate this is and what the learning curve is going to be for certain ages. I mean, that.
Well, I admit I'm married to a teacher.
No, and I again,
she's all pre-K, kindergarten, preschool, first grade. That's her whole area.
Right.
And I'll tell you what, it's all about age appropriate learning, all of that. So just kind of like it was nothing that I nobly came up on my own. I wasn't like, I knew about that all along and let me go ahead. No, I have a wife out here that really kind of like goes, hey, rings me in sometimes,
Oh, well, my wife rings me in a lot of times, or winds me up at other times, in which case, Mike's seen Rachel get wound up once or twice.
My wife cares so little that she watches the shows every week, and I ask her like, "Oh, did you like the show?" Like, yeah, what was it about? She never knows.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. You told a funny joke that one part, and I was like, yeah, okay, I guess okay. You're right. I did. I told a funny joke. That was true. Now,
I'm almost afraid to get topical here because there's a whole. I've had numerous people reach out to me about the incident at Gen Con, but it's.
But by the way, if you ever want to talk about that, I can go into detail, but it's probably not the time or place.
No,
but I have done an immense amount of research on that. Immense, spelled with an E, not I. Immense.
Right, so Mike, we'll do a special on that one. We'll do an off Wednesday.
It's an interesting. I'll tell you, it's an interesting topic.
I tell you, yeah, it is, and it has a shocking surprise ending too that I don't know if anybody saw coming. That was pretty. I thought was very hilarious, but yes, it's I did a lot of research that, and let me tell you, it's not easy to do research on it because a lot of that stuff's been scrubbed already. A lot of
It's down the memory hole. Yeah,
yeah.
they've been deleting accounts.
It's very embarrassing for everybody involved. Gen Con, Cobalt Press, the streaming service, which I don't remember the name of, so I won't say it because I would be guessing. Everybody involved, it's very much egg on the face, and they have scrubbed. They've gotten rid of all that stuff. But I can tell you what happened. I know all the pertinent facts. So, but yeah, it's wild. It's wild, and we'll spend time on it when necessary. I mean, it's not like it. Let's put it this way. It's not a public service thing because it's not going to happen to anybody else. The person involved has been fired and pretty much probably won't work in gaming ever again.
Yeah.
But it's just an interesting story about what happens when you have a bunch of companies that are used to going to Gen Con and something bad happens, and this is how they cover it up. Is what it boils down to, because it's very embarrassing.
I think the cover up is going to be the more interesting aspect of this than in the actual offense. Although I think, because again, that tells a lot. But seriously, Mike, one over the next couple of days, we'll record it. We won't have to do it as a live stream. If we do it as a live stream, we'll have too many people.
Because it's interesting, but honestly, I don't know. And look, I'm talking. It's me talking, except for purient giggle interest. I mean, so what? Okay, somebody, yes, they were harassed very, very horribly, basically molested at Gen Con, and it was a clown show because it was really just awful behavior on one person's part. They went way over the top. If anything,
with multiple people.
Oh my gosh, just a clown car bad behavior.
When you have to do an emergency cleanup for the hotel bar, because somebody projectile vomited all over the place.
Even you and I haven't done that, Eric. And
and I have
not thrown up in the bar yet at the Gen Con or the Gary Con or the Game Hole Con bar. We have not, or the North Texas bar. We have not thrown up in the bar yet. Not.
I could try to get there, but my bladder would not let me. Yeah, we're just like in the background goes, no, you'd wait to get to the room. That's a game hole incident, by the way, and it's not mine. But I'm just going to throw my wife under the bus.
Game hole. No, we're talking about the Gen Con incident. This did not happen at Game Hole. I don't want to throw Alex under the bus to say no. This was a Gen Con, but has there been a game hole incident? I don't think we're. I think
no. This was when the community bought Rach a bottle of what was it, Rach?
Oh boy,
Bailey's Irish Cream, and
And drank it with tea and pizza.
Oh yeah, she had tea and pizza with it.
Oh, I know exactly where that went from. Oh
yeah. She made it to the room. All right, so. But now, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because it's convention related, and we brought this up, I guess, last week, Mike, about GaryCon, and I've not seen an update. I might have missed it. I have not seen an update on GaryCon.
You know what? They're doing the smart thing. And I think it's very smart because I think we talked. I don't know if we talked about this or not last week, Eric, but CDC just came out with a huge update, and it changes a lot of things. Number one, they say that cloth masks aren't really necessary, which is something they've been talking about for a while. Fauci's even admitted that, so that's something that might change different behavior. They had a lot of little incidents. I'd have to go over the CDC report to remember.
Well, I have a Bloomberg page up here, which I wanted to touch on real quickly. I just thought it was interesting. The CDC no longer makes a distinction in vaccination status for workplaces or other sites that conduct screening. So if you're going to screen, whether they're vaccinated or not, everybody should get vaccinated, or everybody should get screened, or nobody gets screened. But more importantly, Massetti, who is one of the doctors at the CDC, said the changes reflect data indicating 95% of the population has some protection either from infection or vaccination, which tells me that requiring a vaccination to go to a convention, this is just my opinion, folks, I'm vaccinated. I have my first booster. All right, so I'm not somebody who's an anti-vaxxer. But right now, they're saying, vaxxed or unvaxxed, you likely have the same protection.
I think it has to do with, because I have some ongoing medical issues, and I think that we're at the point now with so many people have become vaccinated, and so many on one side, and then also so many people have got COVID.
Yep.
But minor cases of COVID. I think we're reaching that. I think they call it herd immunity part now.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing in the overall. Is finally getting to this point. But
also,
places like Gary Con,
there was a big I think it was either today or yesterday. The CDC announced some sweeping changes, and they reorganized the whole agency because they got on. They did the right thing. They got on TV and admitted we effed up. We screwed this whole thing up bad, which I think is that's refreshing for a government organization to say that, because usually they blame they're pointing the fingers at everybody else. But they had a big thing to say, look, we really messed it up. A lot of the things that we talked about that we thought were confusing, they admitted were confusing, and they said we should not have done daily briefings on a pandemic, which is stupid, because things don't develop that quickly.
No.
You have to wait after a week or 2 weeks or a month. And they admitted that they were caught up in the whole news cycle. Let's get stuff out there real quick. And that's why they would contradict themselves. And Monday they'd say no mask, and Wednesday they'd say mask, and then Friday they'd say no mask, and Saturday they're back to mask because they got caught up. So the upshot is that I think that this is going to be interesting to see. You were talking in regards to Gary Con. I think they're doing the right thing by not saying anything right now. Let's let all the chips fall out where they are. And then you can take a good look at it in, I don't know, January, December, and say, okay, here's what the CDC seems to be saying now. And they're saying, let's, for instance, say they're saying no masks and it doesn't really matter if you have a booster. Okay, we can go with that, which is much better than what they were doing, which was saying, we're going to do whatever the CDC says. Well, the CDC has already admitted they change daily what they're thinking. So that's just a terrible. So you're going to get people telling you one day, hey, the CDC said today this. What's your policy now?
But I think one of the big problems, Mike, is that you got a place like you got an organization, con like Gary Con, and you run a convention. It's kind of like a really hard thing to kind of make both sides happy, because on one hand you have people who say, I don't want to do this, and you have other people that are saying yes, and then you have the pandemic happening, and because of the CDC giving all this contradictory information, one day this, one day that, I mean, I think like a lot of places have done, is they've just kind of went, what we're going to do, we're going to go with the blanket iron policy because that's the safest, even though we may not agree with it.
You get caught up in stuff, and for instance, we talk about a lot when you schedule a con, and Doug and I figured this out early on within the first couple of years. You're never going to make everybody happy. Whatever your con is, somebody can't come to your con for some reason, and so we decided we're going to stay the first weekend in June. Well, everybody, they had a kid graduate, like, I can't make your con. Oh my god! And like, okay, well, when should we have it? The week before, because that might be other graduations the week after. Oh, and wait, that's origins now. I mean, so and the same thing with the CDC policy or a policy about masks. You're never going to make everybody happy, and you're always going to get somebody says, I can't go to your con because you're doing this, and that's all right. And then you just say, you know what, I understand that perfectly, and except here's our policy. Now we're, I guess you could call it lucky or unlucky, in that with North Texas. We decided, and Doug and I decided this a couple of years ago when he was still around, was that we're going to do what the state of Texas and the county says we're supposed to do, because that way you cannot get in trouble. If you go by county, the county says, and what the state says, you're golden. Because I think the problem comes when you either try to, I don't want to say it's virtue signaling, but when you try to say we're going to do more than what the state and county says because we think that we're going to save your life, that's when you piss off people like me. That's like, wait a second, that's not your job. Your job is just to present a convention and to do this, whatever the government says is supposed to hold. Like, for instance, when I went to Gamehole Con, we had to wear a mask, and the reason we did, because that Dane County in Wisconsin still had a mask thing on.
Because
it's ridiculous.
in
because
March, wasn't Gary Con in
Gary
Wisconsin? Isn't Wisconsin sitting there making masks? Are they still under a mask mandate?
No.
Well, no. And here's the problem. That was the problem with Gary Con this year. Now, Gamehole last year, they went with what Dane County said. Dane County said you must wear a mask, you must have a vax card, whatever. So Alex did the right thing and said, okay, we're just going to do what the county says. The problem with Gary Con this year is, at the time, the counties were not requiring masks, and they were not requiring this. They went above what the county required. And then there was stories, and Eric and I have independently verified these, that there was a lot of people just not wearing masks that were part of Gary Con organization.
Yeah, I actually read that Luke was there not wearing one, and I don't know if that's true, but there was a big thing on Facebook and a couple of the OSR groups that they were talking about, about Luke not wearing. And again, I wasn't there. I don't know, but I guess.
Well, no, and also, I mean, you don't have to wear. So whether or not Luke wore or didn't wear depends on where he didn't or didn't wear it, because they mostly enforce this in certain areas of the hotel, and that was one of the complaints that I heard from people, is that they mostly enforced it in the vendor hall. And then that was where they mostly enforced it, because there was obviously the hotel had no mask policy. So you could walk all up and down the hotel. As soon as you walked out of the vendor area or the game area, you could take your mask off. There was no mask mandate in the hotel. The hotel workers did not wear masks. So if Luke is in the lobby, he doesn't have to wear a mask. He doesn't have to. Now, if Luke was in the vendor hall not wearing a mask, that's a different story. And I don't know. And I think I don't want to damn Luke by that, because I don't know. I don't know.
That's my thing.
But that was the issue, is that it was so. People felt like it was randomly enforced. Like, here I was in the vendor hall. They're in there every 10 minutes telling me to put my mask on. Yet when I walk out in the hallway, nobody has a mask on. How's that helping? How's it helping for me in the vendor hall to have a mask on, or me at the game table to have a mask on, when I can walk through the entire rest of the hotel, including the lobby? And Erica, I've been to the lobby with the bar and everything. It's just full of people. And yet nobody has to wear a mask there, because the hotel doesn't have a mask mandate. That's why the best thing to do is just do what the local laws say. If they say this, you could just. We had this question, and Eric knows a story about guns at our convention. We had a few people a few years ago that said, hey, I want to know if people carry guns to your convention, because I do. I don't want to go to your convention. And our response was, they're legal. They can legally carry guns to our convention. We cannot stop them. We cannot tell them not to. It's against the law to do that. Now, the hotel could ban guns, but they don't. All the hotel ban is open carry. There's a form, a 3.06 form, that they have to put up in the front of the hotel. It has to be a certain size and everything, and it tells you if this is an open carry or a concealed carry. Some will say you can't bring guns of any kind here. That's like a bar or a school, place like that. They will say no guns of any kind. The hotel we stay in is a concealed carry only, so you just can't open carry. There's nothing we can do about that, because we're in the hotel. There's no way somebody walks into where the convention is and we say, oh, by the way, you can't bring a gun in here, but you can have a gun over here. We're not legally, we can't do that. Right. So that's what we told people. It's like, look, by the law, people can conceal carry. I don't know who has a gun and who doesn't. I would suspect there's some people I know that will. Like, I think Doug carried like 3 guns at all times. Doug always had guns. We have a bunch of West Texas sheriffs that come to our con. I would suspect they probably had guns on, but I didn't see them. But that's the kind of thing that just makes it much easier if you just say, here's what the law is, here's what we have to do, we can't change this.
See, that goes into the whole theory of when in Rome, do like the Romans do, and I agree with that. I think that's the safest measure, because you're in that county, you're in that state. It's like the Michigan Gamers Expo that we were going to have in December. We ended up canceling it because Michigan came down with this real stringent, public gatherings over 300 people and all that. That's all been lifted now. But, I think when it comes to game conventions, if they handle it, I think, like you just said, very smartly, listen, this is the law. This is what the regulations are right now. This is what our health department says we have to do in this county, in this state, and run with it. I mean, in that way.
And Don, people were happy to look. Even people that thought that you should have to wear a mask and have vaccine cards. When we told them what the laws were in the county, they were very accepting of that. They didn't say, well, that's terrible, you need to do it. No, they're like, okay, well, I understand. And then they either make the decision to come or not based on that. And I have no issue with that. I have no issue with that at all. You make a decision based on that. But the problem, I guess the problem I have is if I'm going to a convention, I want to know if there's an arbitrary rule, why that arbitrary rule is there, you know? And so if you arbitrarily say I have to have 2 vaxes and 2 boosters, and I personally haven't had any boosters, I want to know why do we need a booster? And here I'm looking at the CDC. The CDC says the boosters don't matter anymore. So you explain to me why you think I should have 2 boosters. That's the kind of thing that upsets me is when.
Well, see, like my issue is similar, but not quite, because GaryCon next year is saying that you have to have your 2 initial shots or one of the J&J plus up-to-date boosters, which could be 2 to 3 as they are.
Right. Depending on what happens.
Doesn't affect hotel staff, doesn't affect the venue staff, doesn't affect other guests at the Grand Geneva. So really, what you're not putting up a shield, you're not making sure that everybody is vaxxed. So really, especially now after the latest CDC announcement.
And then that's what I told Eric, and Eric remember a few weeks ago that I decided I probably wasn't going to go to GaryCon, but if I did, I just wouldn't register for GaryCon. I just go stay at the hotel. And if they see me walking down the hall, I go, I'm just a guest of the hotel. I just wouldn't go into the vendor room or play a game. I'd be golden. I could walk all around the hotel and say, I'm just a guest of the hotel. The hotel is not requiring a mask. And so, it's look, we're going to look back at all of this and think it was stupid. Like, what the hell are we doing? These are.
But at the end of the day, you know what? Even if GaryCon has extremely stringent rules, you know, at the end of the day, it's all going to be about this: is people's acceptance of that will reflect in their attendance. I mean, if people are going to say, you know what, F that, I'm not going to do this bullshit, then they don't go, and then GaryCon will go, holy cow, we have we're down 1/3 from 2 years ago or whatnot, and I think that's the best way of doing it. And plus, with it being only August 17th, a lot can happen in the next 8 months or whatever it is.
Right.
I mean,
that's why it wasn't smart of them to say, here it is, August. Here's what we're going to do in February. That's one thing you want to avoid.
Well, but here's the issue there, Mike. All right, they have this policy, and this is. Again, I'm speaking with my own personal opinion on this. I'm no expert on it. But if I go to order tickets to a convention, that might not be refundable if I somehow decide.
Well, they've already said they're not. They've already said they're not refundable. So you're making a good point. That's a good point.
And there's no pop-up telling me, hey, your terms include making sure your vaccine status is up to date, and there is no testing as an exception this year. I don't see that. I buy my diamond badge for, I don't know how much diamonds are, 500, 1,000, some ridiculous amount. And now you're telling me, I can't, my doctor told me I can't get any more shots, right? My doctor said, and I'm just happens to be somebody peripherally attached to the family of nobility in this case. They can't attend because this wasn't out in front. It's one thing if you make this policy and it's out in front. Before you put your money down, we're telling you these are the restrictions. I would not have an issue. Might not like it, but I wouldn't have an issue. But the fact that you're taking money from people and then, you should have looked up the terms and conditions beforehand. There's no refunds.
I don't disagree with you. I don't want to say this the way to make Luke mad because I love Luke, but that's one reason North Texas offers refunds or actually rolling over your ticket. That they're right there because, look, if you tell somebody they just spent $500 they can't come to your con, you know what they're going to do? They're going to lie about being sick. You say, you know what, you're sick, you can't come to our con. Oh, and by the way, you're not going to get a refund on your $300 ticket. They're just going to say, well, you know what, I'm just going to go anyway and not tell them sick. The way you keep sick people out of your convention is to say, look, we'd love to have you, but if you're ill, Just
Right.
roll it over to next year, and you're all taken care of. We don't want to take your money for something like that. And look, if you're listening and you want to rebuttal this and say I'm full of shit or something, because I don't know everything that's going on behind the scenes at Game Call. I have no, or again,
Gary County.
I don't know. And so that's one way you do it, and that gets really tough when you don't offer refunds. I know my pal Alex at Gamehole, they will also roll you over because of the same reason. They don't want to be stuck there having to let sick people in because they're scared they might lose their money. Because that's just human nature. I mean, I know it sounds stupid, but we've all seen people go places sick when they shouldn't be there. They're coughing and wheezing, their eyes are, pouring, and they're like, "What is wrong with you?"
I'm fine.
I'm gonna have to see the Eagles, man. The Eagles might die before I see them again. Okay, yeah. Well, we're all gonna die before we see them again because you're spreading your germs. Dude.
It's just seasonal coof allergies. I'm sorry. But
so I understand what you're saying, Eric, and that's true. Is that they made kind of the catch-22 position? Is that we don't want to make any kind of commitment right now. But by the way, buy your ticket now. And by the way, if our commitment later on includes this, and this, you can't come to our con. Yeah, that's a tough one. But I think to their credit, I would hope the reason they took that all down is they're trying to work it all out. They tried to say,
well, I think the reality of it is I think that they're realizing that with the whole thing with the CDC changes, the CDC changes on one hand, you have the the country getting up to that herd immunity level that they've all talked about so much,
right?
And they know that it's so far out right now, and things are. Let's face it. I mean, COVID is improving daily, basically now.
Yeah,
I mean, we're getting better and better. So, I'm like I said, I don't know Luke. I've never talked to him. I don't, it's his convention, but I hope that's what's driving them to maybe rethink some of the policies.
Look, everybody that I've known that's gotten COVID, I mean, I can't speak absolutely, but my grandson just had it, and he had a cough for 5 days. He's fine. I've had a few couples, friends of mine, that caught it for the first time and never had it. And I was expecting they might get it worse, and no, they had no issues. They didn't feel good for about 3 to 4 days. So yes, it's improving, which is great. That's what we want, right? We want this thing to get to where it's just like seasonal flu. You get it, you might get it every year, and if you do, you're going to be down and out for a few days. And now hopefully you don't have to worry about long COVID. I still can't properly taste or smell, and it's been 6 months now. That sucks. At least I didn't lose my hearing, or I don't know what's happened. Some people had some terrible long COVID symptoms. Yeah. So, but those don't seem to be happening either as much. So that's good. So we just hope we pass the worst.
My brain fog lasted about a month, maybe 6 weeks. My lethargy lasted about 3.5 months, where I was sleeping.
I had the same thing here. I hate the sense of taste drives me insane because it works sometimes. So that really makes me mad because sometimes I'll be like, oh man, this hot dog was delicious. I haven't tasted a hot dog in so much. And then the next day I go, man, the hot dog was great. And I have a hot dog and I can't taste it. Oh, crap. So yeah, that's a pain in the ass. It's an absolute pain in the ass.
Well, I think we've.
I get excited when we talk about hot dogs and food, man.
Mike, I had Dominic's hot dogs today.
Losing my sense of taste.
Rated best hot dogs in New York City. It's a food truck. Same location on Woodhaven Boulevard. We went to the park.
I would much rather, at this point, I think if my left nut fell off, I'd be happier if I got my taste back. If my left nut, I would give up my left nut for my sense of taste.
Who needs my balls? I want to build those hot dogs, man.
Hey, I'm 60 at this point. I don't need them anymore. But yeah, it just sucks because I'm one of those people. I enjoy tasting food. I'm a big guy, and at this point, I can't stand eating another. Oh my God, that looks so good. And you take a bite, you're like, I can't fucking taste it. And so my wife we're used to it now. We'll go out to eat. And because she every once in a while she gets it. She's had it for a few years now. I think she got COVID years and years ago because, COVID's been around a long time. She's lost her sense of smell and taste probably about, 8 years ago. And we'll be out and we'll be like, let's just save this because we're like eating going I can't we're having like beautiful enchilada dinner with
you can't taste that enchilada, really
what's the point? What are we doing? Why are we suffering? Why are we doing this? So we just box it all up, and then hopefully we can taste it the next day, and everything will be better. So.
Sean Vera, having several people at my office have gotten the past week have gotten COVID. Everyone fully vaccinated and boosted. Most are recovering. At least 2 are completely down. It does vary. It does.
Yeah,
it certainly does.
And this is true too. When I had COVID, I don't even know I had it. I've had friends that didn't know until they took a test and like, I've had COVID.
So we thought it was a cold. It was right before New Year's. And we were making our plans to go down to our local pub for New Year's Eve.
Same time I got it, Eric. Yeah, we got the same time. Yeah,
we should test for COVID. I'm like, why? We got the home test.
We did the same thing. Yep.
And I'm like, and as a Lork, I'm like, yeah, right, Rach. I'm like, yeah, give me your nose.
Well, we did the same thing.
I'm like,
there it is. And you're like,
I go, Rach. She's like, I go, yeah. I'm like, you're pregnant. She's like, what? All right. Well, you're not pregnant, but you do have COVID.
That or COVID. Oh man.
Yeah.
You know.
It's like, congratulations, you've got a baby COVID.
We had annual Christmas party we go to every year with a bunch of friends, and we had allergies after the allergies. And after 5 days, I said, we've had allergies a long time. And my wife said, yeah, I'm feeling a little weird. And we took the test and we had it. So we're like, oh, so for the last 5 days, this hasn't been allergies. This has been COVID, I guess. And but yeah, we're the same way. If we didn't take a test, we would have known. We would have known if we didn't take a test. But we thought it was allergies.
Yeah, in our case, it was kind of like just telling my parents who were up in the Poconos for the holidays, yeah, you're not coming home for a few more days.
You get to stay down. You get to stay up there some more.
You get to
we don't
stay
want
up
you coming
there.
here.
But we're really bored. I go, yeah, well, avoid the COVID. We'll let you know when Rach is clean. Because we only had one set of tests. So if we needed a test to test and needed a test to test out. So it's like, I just assumed I had COVID.
For those who don't know, you can get several tests from the government. I have, because I'm cheap.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they've had 3 rounds of those, so I think you can get up to 8 tests. There was a 2, and then a 2, and then a 4. You go to a website, government site, you put your address in there, and boom, you get as many as you're supposed to get, which I think is at this point it's about 8. And the best part is, if you have more than one address, just get them for all your addresses. We got 8 for our PO box and 8 for our house. So we're loaded, baby. We got them. Mm-hmm. But they're good
the government's going to tax you on that, Mike. You got an extra 8 tests. You better watch out.
Oh, no. Well, that's why they're hiring all those IRS agents, is to get people that got too many COVID tests.
God. Folks, I'm going to say it one last time for those that are not watching, those are listening, because I know people do listen to YouTube and don't actually watch it. My wife is one of those often. Tenkars-tavern.games/D20 Delving. That's how you can go. You can look at Don's Kickstarter. I think it looks great. I'm in for 110 myself. Tim Cask is timeless, and this will actually make Tim timeless because you'll always be able to hear crotchety grognard Tim. You're dead. I want to actually. That's what I want. I've heard so many stories of people playing at Tim's games at conventions. And somebody like arguing a rule with him, and Tim just saying, "You're dead."
Yep.
What? Get up! You're dead. Don't even bother rolling a saving throw. You're dead.
Yep.
Never argue a rule with Tim. So.
Oh, we got good stories about that too. We'll have to tell sometime.
Do you want to tell one before we balance?
Yeah, I'll tell you a story. So this is from the horse's mouth. This is Zach Glazer. He went to GaryCon one of the first years, and he's in a Tim. He's never played with Tim Cast before, and he's all excited. He's in a him and Jim Wampler, our buddy Jim Wampler. They're in a Tim Cast game, and for those who don't know, Jim and Tim are very, very close friends, and so they're running a game. They decide to have a break about in the middle, and so they get a break. And this guy walks up to Tim. He goes, "Hey, I'd like you to know that I don't think you know how to play D&D." And Zach and Jim look at each other and like back away from the table. They push away. They're like, "Oh, delicious." And then Tim's like, "What?" It's like, yeah, I don't like the way you do this, and Tim proceeded to tear him a new one. And Zach and Jim had front row seats to this tell.
Wow.
And then they ended with "Get the hell out of here! You're not playing in my game anymore."
Telling Tim Kask, you don't know how to play D&D.
I don't think he knew who he really knew who he was. He just knew he was some old guy around D&D. He didn't know who Tim Kask is. Tim Kask, and so he just didn't like, because Tim plays OD&D. He doesn't play AD&D or anything like that. So he's got some rules that OD&D are not like AD&D, or they're very weird. So I guess this guy didn't appreciate they didn't get to roll a saving throw, or I don't know what it was. Yep. But yeah, Tim basically told him, shut the fuck up and get out of my game. Threw him out of the game. While Zach and Jim got to have a front row seat to that.
Front row seat. Only thing that was missing was a recording, because that would have been perfect for a D20 Delving.
I told Zach, why didn't you turn your phone on?
I got an idea now. I got to go ahead and call Tim. I'm thinking I might get a recording on something here,
Yeah, like, you're dead. Get up. Step away from the table.
There's a lot of there's a lot of stories about Tim like that if you talk to people. So, but he's a nice guy, fun guy. I'll tell you what's great about Tim too. Get him at a convention. He doesn't do this as much because he used to go online and just say, "Here's how I feel about this. He censors himself a little nowadays, which is probably good. You don't always say so. I know that he has said that he apologizes for some of the stuff he used to say about Dave Arneson online in front of people, because he did not like Dave Arneson. He said some things about him, but the great thing about Tim is he'll still tell you that stuff in private. So if you want to hear the stories that he won't tell in public anymore, he'll tell you in private, because he does filter himself now. It doesn't seem like he does, but he does. He filters himself.
Well, I mean, Tim filtering himself is,
it's still
a very unfiltered cigarette or rolled piece of.
Well, for example, he used to call Dave Arneson the Toad, and he does not do that anymore, which is probably nice, because Dave's passed away and his family's still around, so he won't do that anymore. He won't call him the Toad, but yes, he used to call him the Toad. I don't know if that was because he did Blackmore with the frogs, or all the frogs in Blackmore, or I don't know, but he would call him that online, and then one day he said, "You know what? I'm not going to call him that anymore. He passed away. It's not fair for him to do that." I was like, "Yeah, that's classy. That's true. You probably shouldn't. When Eric passed away, we won't call him the names we call him behind his back either. We'll just
gee, nobody bring out my police nickname.
We'll call him the bar. We'll just call him the bartender in the OSR.
The bartender, yeah. Tenkar, that fucking cop. Don Semora. What was the? Sorry, that's the Zach Smith name for me. What was the game where the guy told Tim he was wrong, and why did he think he knew what it meant? And Tim's reply, because I wrote it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he was at the game, James. You were there too. See there. Now here we go. This is. By the time we're through, 100 people have been at this game. No, I'm just kidding, James. No, James was there, so that's great. That's great. Yeah, that sounds like exactly like something Tim would say. That's great. I don't understand why you think this is that way. Because I told Gary that's the way it is. Now get out of here. Get off my table.
Get off my lawn. God damn it. Folks, thank you very much. Don.
Yeah, thanks, Don. Thanks for coming. We appreciate it. And
thanks for having me.
We got you a couple sales. We didn't, I still have to
much
pledge.
Appreciated.
I don't have
Every
my
bit counts.
Password. I can't.
Oh, real quick.
Yes.
I did this yesterday. I don't know if everyone knows about it, but what we're trying to do is if we can get up to $6,000 on the Kickstarter by this Friday at 8:00, I'm going to take one of the stretch goals, which is adding skills to the game, and we're just going to toss them in the game.
Oh, nice. Yeah, great.
That makes it much more RPG-ish.
Yes.
A little depth. I like that. All right, folks. Listen, we've touched on it, right? We touched on that horrible word that used to demonetize videos. Touched on COVID. But it's no longer a pandemic. It is pretty much an endemic. As such, I'm going to leave it as use your common sense. Okay? I'm not your father. I'm not going to wipe your ass. Not going to get the schmutz off your nose. It's on you. Be safe, be well, God bless. Roll those dice, roll them well. Tomorrow night, we are on the Discord server at 9 p.m. at Tenkar's Tavern. Weekly hangout. Looking forward to seeing you. Glenn and I, Friday night at 8 o'clock. Rich and I, maybe a special guest. I'm not quite sure yet. Saturday night at 8. Again, just so you don't miss out on it. Tenkars-tavern.games/D20 Delving. All right, folks. We're out.
Later.
Later.